So we'll move on to skills and support with Sarah. And Sarah's going to talk about consent and talking about consent with your kids.
Yeah, thanks. So I wanted to talk about consent today because I think it can feel like a really hard topic to know, like how to explain it and talk about it with your kids. And so I wanted to talk about it as it relates to speaking to younger kids and older kids, because we might address it in different ways, obviously. But there are ways to talk to young kids about it, even if we might feel a little bit intimidated. So one of these ways is just to kind of explain to your child that it's important for them to ask permission before they hug or touch a friend or other kids or family members. And so that helps to kind of explain boundaries and get that in their mind that is necessary and respectful. Some other ways that you can kind of demonstrate consent is by talking to family members about, this is something that we're working on together as a family. And so rather than expecting a hug, from my child, I would really appreciate it if you could ask first and say, hey, is it okay, if I give you a hug, or would you like a hug today? Rather than assuming and not asking at all, or, a lot of times we might see with good intention, somebody saying, hey, go give grandma a hug. But when we're able to ask and demonstrate that to our kids, it helps them to recognize I have a say, I have a choice in this, and I get to choose what happens to my body. So kind of going along with that, when your child might say no, because that definitely might happen sometimes, we don't always feel like having a hug, it's important to honor that and respect it and say, okay, that's totally up to you and it's your body, so I'm going to respect that. Some other things that are important when we're talking to kids about consent is that we really want to respect the words no and stop when we're hearing that from other kids, but also that, when we say that ourselves, that it should be respected and that our words matter and have an impact. And then lastly, when we're talking about younger kids, it's important to teach them about body safety in general and what is a safe touch and an unsafe touch. And so one thing that I just kind of wanted to share as a resource, because that can be a really intimidating conversation to have, and it's hard to know what exactly to say sometimes, is a book that is written by actually the guest who we're going to have on later in our show. So it's called I Said No, and we use this book all the time in counseling, but it's really great because it teaches about red flag and green flag behavior, and it's all done kind of from like a kid-to-kid perspective. So it's really child-friendly, and definitely I'll let Kimberly explain that a little bit later. But we have the website up on our website for where you can check this book out and get it for your family. And it's just a really great conversation starter if you're not really sure where to start with that topic. So moving on, when we're talking about consent with older kids, definitely all these things that I already mentioned are important to kind of remind our older kids and teens of, but we want to expand on it a little bit more. And so I'm just going to kind of use an example when we're talking about consent with older kids of posting a picture of somebody else on social media. So I'm going to pull up another screen, kind of bouncing back and forth a little bit today. So I love this graphic because it uses something that most of us also love, which is French fries. So while I'm explaining, this example of asking to post a picture on social media, we're going to kind of run through some of these specifics of what consent means. And so a lot of times when we think about consent, we kind of assume that it just means that somebody will say no if they don't want something. But it actually is so much more than that. And so we're going to run through what this means. So let's say I wanted to post a picture of like my friend on social media. I thought it was a really cute picture, and I just wanted to share it. And so when I would ask my friend, because ideally we would ask for consent before we do this, I would want to ask her when she's able to freely give consent. So that means, I wouldn't wake her up in the middle of a nap. I probably wouldn't do it while she's like distracted or talking to somebody else. I would want her full engagement. And so that helps me to know that she's really hearing what I'm asking and that she's really able to say whether she's okay with that or not. And then the R stands for reversible. And so let's say my friend says yes, that she's okay with me posting that picture. And then a couple of days later, she's like, oh, I really don't want it up there anymore. Like, I don't like how my hair looks, or whatever it might be that makes her think that she doesn't want that picture up anymore. She's allowed to say, no, I don't want my picture up anymore. Please take that down. And then, I would honor that, because just because somebody says yes once doesn't mean that that's like a commitment to yes forever. And the I stands for informed, and I kind of like to pair this with the S, which is specific, because when we are asking somebody for consent, we really want to make sure that they know about what they would say yes or no to. And so, for instance, I would like to say, can I please post this picture and show what the picture is on my Facebook page, being really specific about what social media, and maybe even explaining what kind of caption I would put with it, whether I would tag her, all of the specifics of what I would want to do. That way she can say, okay, yes, I'm okay with that. Maybe can we change the caption? She can have some say for what she's comfortable with or not. And then the E stands for enthusiastic. And so that just means that, let's say I ask her and she's like, maybe, I don't know, I guess that's okay. I would not count that as consent, because she's not very excited about a yes. She's not saying no, but she's definitely not saying yes, when she might be kind of like toggling back and forth in that way. So we want to assume that if it's not an enthusiastic yes, then we're going to count that as a no, or maybe just have a further conversation before proceeding. So I love that example. I think that's something that you can really use to help to kind of guide a conversation with your older child or teen. And then I just wanted to share a couple of other resources, because there are some really great games that I found online that help with engaging in this kind of conversation. And sometimes you don't even notice when you're playing these games that it is kind of addressing these topics of consent, but it still gets the message through really clearly. Okay, so this first game is called How to Blorble Blobble. And it is kind of, the premise behind it is that we're learning a series of really fun dance moves, and that we need to find a partner to help us dance and have fun. And so this little guy up in the corner helps to teach us about the important steps in finding a dance partner and saying hi to them and asking if they want to dance. And so you kind of go through and you get to choose, if you want to look around and see if you can find somebody. And then you can choose who you might want to dance with, and then you can talk to them. And if you skip a step, they'll let you know. So, if you don't even say hi, then he'll be like, well, you need to introduce yourself first, and like, here are the important steps to take. So this is a really fun one. It's pretty basic and easy to do, but it really helps to explain, the messages behind consent while we're having fun at the same time. So the second game I wanted to show is called Adrift. And this one's more of like a game type structure where there's a goal behind it. And the idea is that you're this little guy in the spacesuit, and you're trying to save like a spaceship that made a distress call, I guess. And so you get to move your guy around, and you talk to this artificial intelligence that gives you directions for how to move from room to room. And so when you talk to her, she kind of gives you instructions, and then she says some really cool things that, again, really like relay this message of consent. So you can see this last line. She says, make sure to get my permission first. And things like, just remember to check with me before doing anything. And you don't even really realize that you're learning about these concepts of consent because you're so busy, having fun and playing the game. So these games are really an easy way to relay the message, and it's definitely a lot of fun. So we have them up on our website to check out. The last thing that I wanted to share is that there is a YouTube video up on our website that you can check out that's more geared toward older kids and teens as well. It's just a couple of minutes long, and it demonstrates asking for consent, to go to a movie, and asking for consent before kissing somebody, and all these things that we really want to ask for consent about. And there's also a discussion guide for parents that relates to that YouTube video to kind of help support you when you're talking to your child or your teen about it. So check those things out. If there are any specific questions that you have about, consent or how to talk to your kids about it, let us know. We're happy to address those either on an individual basis or later on when we return back for our show. So yeah, let us know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Sarah. I think it's great consent is such an important topic for everybody to discuss. And I think one of the things that kind of hit home for me that I had heard several years ago, and you sort of reiterated too, is that, when we talk about consent, I think within the work that we do, a lot of it is related to, safe touch and boundaries and body safety. But consent can be taught with something as simple as like borrowing a pencil or asking permission for something. Like it doesn't, especially to kind of lay the foundation, not necessarily starting with the stuff that we deal with on a daily basis, but starting with simple things like, sharing and, asking for permission for things, I think is a great place to start, because then, hopefully that's the kind of stuff that carries over into, as they continue to grow older. They'll know that just when there's something that you are requesting or something that you're asking for, that you be respectful about it and you ask for it in the right way. And I think that is, you lay the foundation for that at an early age with some of these things that you're suggesting. So I think that's great. And I love FRIES, and the acronym I think it's really cool, because it makes it so plain and simple, especially like the way that you described it. It's like, yeah, you should absolutely do each one of those things before, you make a decision or you do something. Like, I think it's great, and it all feels reasonable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's not hard to do. So that's kind of the bottom line, is that it makes a huge difference, but it's a really simple thing to work on and to teach.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. All right. Well, we'll be back. We'll have a test talk, and then we will be joined by our super special guest. So we'll see you in a little bit.